For those of you getting into overlanding or thinking about getting into overlanding, I wanted to take a few minutes to go through the top 10 most essential pieces of equipment that you need to get out on the trail. Beginning with, believe it or not, the most essential thing, a reliable vehicle. The most important thing is that you select a dependable vehicle that is suitable for the terrain or the place that you're going to be going and spending most of your time. Most of the lists say a reliable 4x4 vehicle, but again, overlanding isn't inclusive to just going off-roading or rock crawling or something like that. So whatever you choose, whatever your avenue of exploration, whether it be off-road or just on gravel roads or Forest Service roads, having a reliable vehicle is one of the most critical things that you can bring. You guys have heard me talk a lot about weight, both vehicle weight and gear weight. To me, that's one of the critical items to consider. Lower weight is less stress on your vehicle. A lower weight vehicle is easier to get around in all different types of terrain. So the best way in terms of selecting your vehicle that you can keep both of those things down is to select a reliable vehicle, because you can either have a reliable vehicle before you leave, or you can carry enough spare parts and tools to continuously make your vehicle reliable on the road. Depending on the length of your expedition and of course where you're going to be and how close to services you're going to be, you may have to make some difficult decisions there. Or for somebody like me who is slightly addicted to antique Land Rover Defender 110s, I have to do both. I have to make sure my vehicle is prepared before I leave, and I have to carry enough spare parts to rebuild the vehicle on the trail if I need to. Ideally, though, when you're selecting your vehicle, you want to do only one of those things. And my recommendation is that you make sure that your vehicle is in as sound a condition as it can be before you leave, so that you can minimize the amount of spare parts and tools that you have to take with you on the road. Again, that all falls back to choosing and selecting a reliable vehicle. I drive an Ineos Grenadier off-road. I also think Jeep Wranglers are great. A lot of the Toyota products are just fabulous off-road. They come, the TRDs come with a lot of heavy-duty suspensions and things like that already, standard on the model. So, there's a lot of good ones out there. If you're buying used, just make sure that you run through the traps on the internet to find out what kind of condition the vehicle should be in, so that when you look at it, you know whether or not you're getting a quality used vehicle, particularly with the higher mileage or the older ones. If you're into Land Rover Defender 110s, I'm sorry, I can't help you. They all fall apart all the time, and that's just the way it goes. The number two thing that I would want to have in my first trip out as a new Overlander would be my navigation options. As a former commercial pilot, I like to have backups. So I tend to bring both electronic variants and multiple electronic variants actually, and paper maps. I like to keep my saw sharp by using a compass when I'm on the road to fix positions occasionally, just so I can keep that skill going. But primarily, through apps like Onyx, Gaia, all these other things, I can carry a duplicate set of maps both on my iPad, on my phone, all downloaded of course, and also on my Garmin that I use. So again, having multiple ways to find yourself in and out. This list again is to kind of make sure that your round trip out in the wilderness doesn't become a one-way trip. So navigation is a critical part of that. For all of you free spirits out there who just like to go without planning, at least make sure that you have adequate topographic maps and road maps for the area that you're going to be in. So if you need to reference the map, you have that. It's perfectly fine to wander. I do it all the time, but also have the means to get yourself out when you're finished. Garmin's are great. Obviously, there's a lot of GPSs out there and a lot of different types of Garmin's. I tend to like to go back and forth between which type of Garmin that I use, between a handheld that's mounted on the dash or a larger. The Garmin Overland is the one I'm currently using right now. I love it. It's just big. But again, don't make one decision that you're going to stay permanently affixed to. Find, the thing that you think is going to work best for you now, and then adapt it to other uses later on. But above all, just do not leave your home to go on an expedition without the proper and current maps and electronic maps before you leave. Making sure that your maps are updated is essential. The Buffalo River is very close by here in northern Arkansas, America's first nationally protected river. Lots of great roads, lots of great hiking trails, all of that. Newton County, which is right in the middle of Buffalo River country, at one point here a while back changed all of their county road numbers. And I went out there trying to explore around with a map that was a couple of years old. Well, of course, the numbers I had in my map did not match the numbers that were on the street sign, and it got somewhat confusing for me. So again, not only should you bring the maps, make sure they're current. All right, the third thing that you're going to need is some type of shelter. If you're new to overlanding, I'm sure you see them all over the place. People drive around with rooftop tents and roof racks on their vehicles. Those are nice, those are great. I enjoy them to some degree, but they by no means are necessary. For me, I go back and forth. If you're a dog lover and you have your best friend with you, I have a Newfoundland, and getting that thing in and out of a rooftop tent just isn't going to be possible. So for me, if I'm taking him with me, a ground tent is kind of where it's at. But the main point is that you need to have some kind of shelter where you can get in and out of the elements that's not just your car. Particularly if your car becomes disabled, you have to leave it, or otherwise it's submerged, which can happen. I can tell you from firsthand experience, easier than you think it can. And you'd like to be able to get a shelter out if you need to have access to it that's not affixed to your car. So even if you have a rooftop tent, I would highly recommend bringing a ground tent. But for families, for multiple pets, a lot of gear you want to keep inside out of the elements, a ground tent is a great way to overland. And I did it for years before I had a rooftop tent, and absolutely loved it. Of course, in addition to any tent, you need a comfortable season-specific mattress and seasonally specific sleeping bag. Again, just like with vehicle or any other overland gear selection, you want to tailor what you bring to where you're going, and the worst forecast weather minus about 20 degrees that you are going to see on your trip there. I like to do like a mix of the averages. So if we're a month or two out from the trip, I'll look at the average and kind of pre-select my sleeping bag. If the average temperature that time of year is 40, then I'll bring a 20-degree bag. I take 20 degrees off of my sleeping bag rating so that I make sure that I'm warm and comfortable. And then when we get closer to, I'll double check and confirm that sleeping bag is going to map the actual weather once the forecast comes out. So again, seasonally specific. We want to be able to go out and back, not just out and home in a rescue helicopter. So keeping yourself warm, dry, and out of the elements with a shelter and a proper sleeping bag and pad is essential. For sleeping bags, there's a wide variety. We're car camping here in a lot of cases, so you don't have to mess with some of the higher tech sleeping bags like Sea to Summit or some of those, but they are some of the most robust bags, and I typically use them for overlanding. I'm a big backpacker, so I have them anyway. But beyond that, any of the good house brand 0-degree bags like the Cabela's or the Bass Pro, those are absolutely great for cold weather. They're big, they're square, they're not mummy bags, so you're not going to feel constricted. The key is with this and with clothing, for me, is down to material. Cotton is rotten, they say. Search and rescue calls cotton death cloth. Wearing cotton clothing and using cotton sleeping bags in the winter, to me, is a risk. Even with rooftop tents, you can get water penetration, you can have things happen, and cotton will just not keep you warm if it's wet. So I tend to err towards the synthetic side of the equation. But again, as long as the bag is temperature rated, find the type of bag, the format, whether square or mummy, whether hooded or not, it's going to work for you, and make your selection. There's a lot of great sleeping bags out there from a variety of different price points. There's no reason to go out and spend $300 on a backpacking sleeping bag just to go overlanding. With rooftop tents, same thing with sleeping bags. You can spend thousands of dollars, you can spend hundreds of dollars. It all depends on, again, where you're going, what you're doing, and how much you want to invest in this hobby. I just started with the ground tent just to see if I was going to be into this, experience and want to invest in it further. So that's kind of what I would recommend starting with. But if you're ready to move up to a rooftop tent, we have a video that we made on rooftop tents that we'll link below. It's really good, kind of walking you through the selection process, hard-sided versus soft-sided, and that sort of thing. But in terms of brands, I really like James Baroud tents. I've really started liking the new stuff that's coming out from Roof Nest. Overland Vehicle Systems has been really good to me. They're good and robust. Cascadia Vehicle Tents, they don't make a hard shell tent, but they make some of the best soft-sided rooftop tents that I've seen, and some of them, the Denali, they're massive. I can fit my entire family of 5 in one of them on the roof of the vehicle. Probably exceeding the weight limit on the roof rack, but for the experience, it was absolutely perfect. So again, any questions that you have, ask them down below. I will personally answer them about any of these products. And just make your selection based on knowledge, not on what the thing looks like or what you think you need to have a overlanding rig. Ground tents, like anything else, there's a wide variety of price points. Like I said, I'm a big backpacker. I'm a scoutmaster. I spend a lot of time camping. I invested, and I use that word very deliberately, in a Hilleberg tent. That's kind of one of the best tents you can get, best 4-season tents you can get, and they have a wide variety from 3 seasons and tarps all the way up to tents that are way more expensive than mine. I kind of hit the middle of the road, but it is a nearly bulletproof tent. It's not going to leak. The wind is not going to bend the poles. It's really robustly built. If you're going to camp a lot, if it's not Hilleberg, North Face makes some great tents. All of the normal brands. Big Agnes is another one I like out in Colorado. They started out as a pretty small brand about 10 or 15 years ago, and they're still making really, really great stuff. So again, highly dependent on where you're going and what you're doing. And if you want an opinion on a particular brand or have a question about a particular brand, please ask down below. I'll absolutely answer it as soon as I can. Along with sleeping bags, you're going to want to bring a pillow. Typically, I use a stuff sack in my extra clothes, but the older I get, the less satisfying that is. So again, we're car camping here. If you have the space for it, if it's just you or you and one other person, you can pack big bulky items like bed pillows. Why not? Those little comforts out on the trail that make the challenging days just a little bit more survivable. But if pack pillow you must bring, I would highly recommend Sea to Summit. Really, any of their offerings, either the inflatable or the collapsible pillows, they're just a great product. They're very well made. All of the seams in the inflatable pillows are all double stitched. They're glued really well. There's a soft side on one side of it. It's built to conform around your shoulder. Just the inflatable ones are Sea to Summit are really nice. And then they're collapsible ones. They collapse down to about the size of maybe a Yeti bottle, and then they unfold almost the size of a bed pillow. They're a great option as well. Climate makes some good inflatable backpacking pillows. Kilos Gear also makes some good stuff. I've mentioned that in some previous videos. But a pillow is a good idea, and especially if you're traveling with your spouse, I would over-engineer your pillow selection to make sure that you have maximum comfort. All right, the fourth thing that you're going to need for getting started on an overlanding is some kind of recovery equipment, particularly if you're planning on going off-road. But even if you're just planning on going to remote roads as well. In a rainstorm, some of the gravel, especially out west, can get very slippery, and you can end up off the road in short order, and having some kind of ability to get yourself out is pretty critical. The basics I would carry are a couple of soft shackles, a tow strap, maybe a high lift jack, but if you're just getting started out, I wouldn't put a whole lot of money in recovery gear unless you're going to do something technical. And again, I wouldn't do something technical until you have a little bit more experience in off-roading. A basic equipment kit recovery equipment kit is pretty critical to have. I will link a video that we made on it in the description below. And again, two-way, not one-way. Bring something to help get yourself out if you get yourself stuck. Number 5, water storage and treatment. We did a whole video on water treatment, which we'll link down below. But having enough water, particularly out in the desert or out west, is really critical. Again, that does not mean that you need to actually carry enough water for the entire trip, but you do need the ability to make potable, clean, safe drinking water to be the equivalent of how much you need per day while you're gone. And the average on that is about 3 gallons a day, and that's for everything. That's drinking, washing, cooking, all of that. Now, of course, there's a lot of variables in there that can affect how much you should bring above or below that average. If you're going out west, for example, think Moab, think anywhere in Arizona, Nevada. If you are there during the dry season, you probably will need to carry almost as much water as you're going to need for the entire trip, unless you can identify a stable and secure water source that will be there 12 months out of the year, like a large river or something like that. And then, of course, if you are in a large group and you share dishwashing stations, for example, you can kind of reduce the amount of water you need per day. But the idea of keeping yourself well hydrated is the bulk of that 3 gallons a day. So typically, if I were to go to Moab, for example, I'd carry 3 to 4 days of fresh drinking water for everybody. I know that there are water sources, dependable water sources that I can filter from. So if I'm going out there for a week, I'll usually bring about 3 days. Depending on the availability of water sources, an extra day added on to what you think is going to get you to the next water source is kind of a good rule of thumb, a buffer to say that, even if it takes longer than today, we'll still have that extra day's worth. Key among that is making sure that the water that you do use or that you do acquire out in the field is potable, safe, and drinkable. So in terms of storage, again, if you're just starting out and don't want to invest a lot of money, there's nothing wrong with going and buying those 1 gallon Ozarka bottles at the grocery store. You can use those, you can refill them. I have some that I've carried around for years before they've gotten punctured or come apart on me. Those are an absolute worthwhile substitute for spending hundreds of dollars on a Spectre can or something like that, which is something a lot of people do. I do. I find the value in that, and getting the big 20-liter Jerry or Scepter cans or whatever you want to call them, and affixing them to the outside of the vehicle. To me, it's worth it because we're out on the road a lot, and I like the durability. You can also go to Walmart or Academy and buy one of those collapsible blue. They come in usually 3 or 5 gallon container sizes. Just those blue water storage containers with the spigot on the top. Those are great. Those will last you for years without any trouble. Variety of different options. All depends on what you're comfortable spending, how deep you want to get into the hobby this early on, all those things. On top of storage, in addition to purification, Again, we have a video that I linked down below, but boiling and water treatment tablets are probably the two most reliable, consistently non-parasitic water treatment solutions I've used over the years. So any of the water tablets, the water treatment tablets that you can buy at Bass Pro, Academy, Walmart, the camping sections, they all have them. Or again, just boiling your water in a pot over a stove, and then filling your cans with it, and then letting them cool overnight and having them available for the next day is perfectly adequate and costs nothing more than the gas you burn or the matches you use to start the fire. Number 6 is food storage and cooking. Obviously, second only to water. If you want to enjoy yourself out there, you probably better bring something to eat. Food safety is a critical thing when you're out, especially if you're going to be out in the summer or out in desert climates, things like that. Food can get really hot really fast, and heat and food breed bacteria and all sorts of things that are going to cause you some gastrointestinal distress, possibly at the exact time you're trying to work a line down a ledge on a really precipitous four-wheel drive trail. And that's no time to want to take a shit. But the beautiful thing is, and again, highly dependent on what you're willing to invest, we have the option either of coolers or of 12-volt refrigerators. I've, in recent years, kind of just started carrying a hybrid. Keep my beer on ice, my food in my 12-volt refrigerator. They take up a lot of space in the back of the vehicle, so prepare yourself for that in your packing sequence. But really, there is nothing that replaces the stability of a Dometic or ARB 12-volt refrigerator. They can keep your food consistently cool. They don't use a lot of power. In vehicles with dual battery systems like the Grenadier, you can keep a thing running all night and still have plenty of juice to start your vehicle the next morning. At this point, they've become ubiquitous for a reason. They're simple, they work, they rarely break, and they are just a good addition to your Overland equipment complement. Again, I recommend Dometic, ARB, Engel make some great products. There's a lot out there. Read reviews, ask me questions. I'll help you find the right one. When it comes to dry food storage, keep a separate box for just your dry goods, your breads, your chips, your canned goods if you have them, any of that stuff. A nice tight sealing box to keep rodents out of it, particularly if it sits outside at camp or something like that, but also something that's going to keep the odors from a week-old open chip bag or something like that from permeating into the cabin. And then, of course, storage containers of all sizes are best to keep things organized and to maximize your available packing space. In terms of cooking your food, again, a video that I'm going to do on this shortly on the particular, the different kind of stoves that you can get, but buying something that is relatively compact, used for backpacking or something like that, is great for short trips with few people. And then you can go all the way up to the collapsible stoves that plug into a propane cylinder, and you can cook for a party of 1,000. Those take up a lot of room, not recommended for all trips, but again, all is dependent on what your mission is. Some of the brands of stoves that I like, Jetboil very, very distantly takes this top spot for me in terms of just being able to quickly boil some water for coffee or anything like that, a freeze-dried backpacking meal, whatever. That'll get your water going in just a couple minutes. The downside with the Jetboil is it doesn't do much besides heat that single thing of water. They close together to create one single unit, both the water vessel and the actual stove itself to the gas bottle. So it doesn't have the splay out there to be able to put a pot or something like that on it. For that, MSR is a great brand. They make the ubiquitous Pocket Rocket, really small stove. It expands out so that you can put a skillet or a pot on top of it. It literally fits in your pocket. It has very few parts, so it's not inclined to break at all under most conditions. Pick what works for you. If you're a family just getting started, or even a couple or an individual, going out and get just a simple Coleman camping stove with a green gas bottle, it's a cheap way to get in, and those things will last a long time. Nothing wrong with going out and just buying a Coleman from Academy and getting started on that. Another feature of food safety is ensuring its security. Here in Missouri, black bears have made a comeback in a big way, so either using a bear bag or a bear cylinder, a bear-proof food container, is good if you plan on storing your food outside. If you're out west, it's not just good, it's essential, and in most places, it's the law. You have to secure your food against bears. If you decide to keep it in your car rather than using a bear-proof container outside, make sure that your windows are completely up and your doors are completely closed. A brief Google search or YouTube search will give you all the videos you need to see about what happens to the interior of a car if a bear is even able to get one claw into the window or into the door. So ensure that if you choose not to bring bear safe containers for the exterior of your car, please make sure that your vehicle is well secured and locked. Locked is important. They can't open doors, to make sure that we keep those animals safe and to make sure that we keep our food where we need it. Number 7, power supply and lighting. In this day and age, I have all but just eliminated gas lanterns from my retinue of supplies. There's just so much made now with LED lights that with a good power cube and a good set of LED lights, you'll be able to get all the power you need for your devices and be able to illuminate your entire campsite with or without a fire in the mix. There's so much out there. There's pole lights that can illuminate cones in your campsite. There's small dimmable lanterns. There's ones that simulate a flame. They give you a nice romantic firelight. Really thousands of options for all different types of lighting scenes that you can put around your campsite. But it all starts with power. If you don't have the ability to power those lights or to recharge your devices or whatever, then you are going to find yourself in the dark with no way to illuminate other than a fire, which in this day and age just isn't enough light to do everything you need to do at camp. Jackery's a good brand. Goal Zero's a good brand. A lot of off brands out there. Battery technology is such that you're probably going to get a lot of the same internal components in a lot of these batteries across price points. My discovery over the years has been there's not much difference in battery quality between those different power cubes. What can change pretty dramatically is inverter quality. Brands like Jackery are, they're less expensive than Goal Zero, or at least they were, and their inverters were not as good early on, but they were definitely good enough for what 99% of us are going to do off-road. So again, you don't need to go out and buy a $2,000 Goal Zero Yeti 1400 lithium to get you through your weekend fishing trip. You can use just a portable power bank for that, unless you just want to go out and spend the money, in which case, go to it. But I'm a big fan of buying to size and trying to fit a variety of different applications, but not overbuying. Buying quality, not necessarily brand. Solar panels are another component of power and lighting that are a big feature among the overlanding community. I do use them, but I use them less than I kind of thought I would, even on long expeditions, and especially since I started driving the Grenadier that has dual deep cycle batteries. It's rare for me to go overlanding and stay in one place for more than a few days, more than a couple days usually. And in those situations, I typically would value and use a solar panel, but most of the rest of the time I'm going to be driving anyway, and I can charge from the 12-volt ports in my vehicle. So I would not recommend, especially early on, going like elbows deep into solar panels, because typically you don't really need them unless you're on just real extended expeditions out away from power and away from services. And I wouldn't recommend doing that on your first trip. As far as types of solar panels and things like that go, Goal Zero, for example, they have a nice solar panel that is a Goal Zero solar panel that only requires a cord between the panel and the battery, because there's, in a sense, a charge controller already on board that is compatible with their solar panels. For everyone else, if you want to rig up just a general solar panel array for your vehicle that can charge your vehicle batteries, or maybe you just want to make one for your jump pack at home, you will need a decent charge controller, and that's where solar panels are pretty universal in their output these days. You can buy cheap ones that are that have some less output than the more expensive ones, but generally solar technology is pretty universal across the spectrum. What's really going to make the difference in your ability to charge is a good charge controller. Number 8, first aid and emergency kit. We've done videos on both. I'll link them down below, but notice that there is a first aid kit and an emergency kit. They're not the same thing. First aid kit, of course, is to sort of repair yourself or somebody else. And the emergency kit is used to deal with, we'll just say, generalized emergencies in overlanding. Go bag is another name that people use for it. Just a basic kit with tools, some food, and some other things in it. Again, we've done a video on that, as well as the first aid kit down below. But the key is to have some simple things with you. Most of us all carry multi-tools with us. There's 1,001 uses. That should be part of your emergency kit. Again, as should food. First aid kit should be part of your go bag or emergency kit as well, but then also spend some time on your first aid kit and making sure that you have all the supplies that you're going to need, asking questions such as climate, geography, ways you can get injured in those specific climates and geographies, the age of the people that are going to be with you. Do I have kids? Do I have old folks? Do I need to carry Narcan? Do I need to carry something to prevent people from going into anaphylactic shock, how deep do I need to go in this first aid kit, and then kind of make your decisions from there. Same with your emergency kit. Just look at the videos we posted below, and again, any questions, just let me know. Number 9, weather appropriate gear. Just like with shelter and sleeping bags, as we were talking, it's important to know where you're going and what kind of weather conditions you're going to encounter when you select those things. The same goes for your personal clothing. Don't forget, cotton is rotten. Cotton is death cloth. Unless you're going to be out in the desert during the summer and you're certain it's not going to rain, I would avoid cotton. It just doesn't insulate the way the synthetics do. But before all of that, good weather gear starts with a weather radio or some other kind of way to be able to get local weather. The other also best weather surveying piece of equipment you have are your eyes. We can get so fixated on what's ahead of us on the trail, and I've learned the hard way through a lot of long expeditions about the dangerous weather that can come from behind you, particularly if you're traveling from west to east. A lot of large storms can flare up right behind you. They typically are moving from northwest to southeast, especially up north, out west, Montana and Wyoming, Colorado. And those storms can be on top of you before you even really know they're there. So in addition to having a weather radio and keeping appraised that way, just constantly look around. It should be part of your situational awareness anyway. It's just kind of constantly, understanding the world around you, but particularly for weather, particularly in the summer and out west. Beyond that, you want to make sure that you have good synthetic layered clothing for the winter, and that you want to remember that hypothermia can happen just as easily in the spring and fall as it can in the winter in the right conditions. So just because there are leaves on the trees does not mean that you're free from the risk of hypothermia. So again, just like with first aid, just like with anything in overlanding, the first line of defense is your knowledge base. So going out and learning as much as you can about how to dress for appropriate weather conditions in the particular places you're going to go is pretty critical. You've got to keep you and your group safe, and remember, 2-way, not 1-way trips out. All right, number 10, storage solutions. And this is where it really gets fun, because I love buying boxes and bags and stuff like that. There's nothing more fun for me, and I'm a dork, so that's fine, in arranging the boxes and containers of all of my gear, food, and equipment for a long expedition in such a way so that it's perfectly packed, will not come unpacked inadvertently on a rough road, and still gives us lots of room up front to be able to spread out and enjoy the drive. Packing and repacking is just kind of one of those things I like to do a lot, and I challenge you to do that multiple times before your trip. Take a couple of practice campouts before you actually take an overlanding trip out of town or out of the region, because there are inevitably things that you think you'll need that you end up not needing, and there'll inevitably be things that you don't think you need that you won't have. And the best way to find that out is in practice campouts, before you go. But your storage solutions for those things are critical. I like to keep things in like boxes. I like to have things that I need to grab and go with, like recovery gear, our lunch box, our food box, things like that, close at hand so I can grab them and go with them. Things like bedding, extra water, extra food, stuff that can be buried and can stay buried. Finding out what that's going to be and what your process is like is, pretty critical to do before you get out on the road. You can make small amendments when you get out there, but it's nice to have a baseline understanding of how your camp will operate and how your vehicle will operate before you go out with your storage solutions in mind, so that you can pack, safely and adequately. And I say safely because, if a vehicle turns over or you come to an abrupt stop, flying objects can cause some real damage to the human head. And there is a level of safety involved in how you pack a vehicle, and we'll do a video on that here soon. But in the meantime, for storage solutions, we're looking for, good, robust, solid stuff. What I tell the scouts in our scout troop is Rubbermaid tubs are your friend in this. And if you're starting overlanding and don't want to spend a lot of money, go to Walmart, load up on Rubbermaid tubs. They're great. You can carry all of the stuff you need. You can have your kitchen box and your bedding box and your tent box, however you want to arrange it. And then when you're home, all you have to do is pull them out of your vehicle, go clean the stuff that's in them, and then slide them on your shelf in your garage, and they're ready to go for the next time. These modular storage containers are really, really good for that. So that's it. That's the top 10 items that I think that you're going to need to get started in overlanding, or at least to build a good foundation of equipment for you to be able to start on your first adventure. Spent 25 years overlanding, backpacking, expedition canoeing, all this stuff, and I can tell you that your equipment selection is important, your knowledge base is important, and starting with these foundational pieces of equipment is going to be critical for you. I do sell overlanding equipment, but I'm not going to sell you my overlanding equipment. What I want is for you to be able to make good decisions. So Please subscribe and watch our content. I'm going to keep giving you all the good things that I learn, and you can also learn from all of my humorous and not so humorous mistakes on our channel. So, please like the video, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the trail.